Hey, what's up, guys? Spencer Rhodes here. Negan is a very popular character from The Walking Dead. He is obviously a big bad, but if you read the comics, you might feel that he's more. There's more to him than that. He's pretty much turned into a good guy. Maybe you could call him an anti-hero. Maybe you still consider him a bad guy. Maybe you don't forgive him for killing Glenn or killing Glenn Abraham, depending on which format we're talking about of The Walking Dead. But Negan is Negan. He's a very big character. He's a very popular character. He caused a lot of problems with Rick. He caused a lot of problems for Rick and for everyone else. And he is obviously going to be in Season 9 because he wasn't killed off in Season 8. At the end of Season 8, Rick slices his neck, but it's just kind of a minor injury, and he's going to get locked up. And Rick and Michonne have the intention of keeping him alive as a prisoner, pretty much giving him a life sentence in a prison, pretty much the equivalent of that in the zombie apocalypse. They're going to keep him alive, but he's going to be locked up, and they want him to die an old man and watch them build this new world that Rick was wanting to build. And that is pretty much what happens in the comics. But if you have read the comics, you know that Negan ends up doing a lot more than that. There's a lot more in the story that involves him. He does end up getting out because someone breaks him out because they want Rick dead. Negan ends up killing that person. And there is a new big bad that is causing trouble with Rick and the rest of Alexandria and the communities, and they're the leader of a much bigger group, but Negan ends up pretending to be on their side and kills that leader and brings their head back to Rick and says, "Look, Rick, I have rehabilitated. What can I possibly do to prove that I haven't already done? I am bringing you the head of a leader of these group of people that you are about to fight, and I'm not getting locked up again." And Rick is pretty much in agreement with that. He says, "Yeah, you're right. We can't just lock you up again." And Rick and Negan end up fighting these group of villains, and there's a lot of violence and a lot of deaths. And Negan ends up being a great help. He ends up helping Dwight. He saves Rick's life a few times. He ends up helping a lot of other characters, and he's pretty much a good guy. He's pretty much one of the good guys. He's one of the good guys that fights the bad guys at this point in the comics. But like the TV show, Maggie and Rick, they're never going to let go of what Negan did, killing Glenn, and they still hold it against him. And Maggie almost kills Negan, but decides not to. So they let Negan go off on his own. He's pretty much banished from the group. He's not locked up anymore, but he's a free man. He just can't go back to them. He has to go out and find his own way. And that's pretty much where he's at in the comics right now. Negan is on his own. And although he's kind of redeemed himself and become a good guy, he's still on his own and banished because of his past actions. So that's pretty much what he's been up to in the comics. Now in the show, we're just at that point where Rick had just locked him up. So I think the obvious question is how much of Negan's comic material is going to be adapted to the TV show. And I would say quite a lot, because so far it has been pretty faithful. Most of Negan's story, most of it, maybe 60-70%, most of the dialogue, most of what he does, it's in the show. He is one of the most closely adapted characters in the entire show. Maybe the closely adapted character. And there's no reason for them to stop that now. And Negan has a big beard when he's locked up because there ends up being a time jump. So Negan's in the prison cell for several years, whatever you want to call it, the jail cell. He's in that for several years because several years go by, and Negan has a big beard, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan is capable of growing a beard. We've seen him have the beard in the show, so we already know that Negan is capable of growing facial hair. So we're probably going to get that for one thing. We're going to get big bearded Negan. I made a video about that a few weeks ago, but yes, As for redeeming himself, it's definitely a little different than the comics. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm an Abraham fan. I'm a TV Abraham fan, and I do prefer comic Negan over TV Negan. I think comic Negan just works better than TV Negan. Comic Negan was created just for the comics. Everything he says and does is for the comics. Negan in the TV show was their attempt, Robert Kirkman, Scott Gimbel's, it was their attempt to put comic Negan into the show, and I mean really put him in it. They wanted him to be as close to the comics as possible. They tried to do it dialogue, word for word, panel to panel, everything that Negan says, does. They try to put it in the TV show with some slight differences, and it just doesn't work as well. They made him a little more different in season 8, but overall, comic Negan is better than TV Negan, and it's not Jeffrey Dean Morgan's fault. It's just Negan is funnier in the comics. He's just more. There's just something that's more natural about it. I've made videos about this before, so I'm not going to keep ranting and ranting and ranting, but comic Negan does truly work better than TV Negan, and I think comic Negan is more likable than TV Negan. Comic Negan is almost, I would say, more reasonable, less of a psychological psychopath. They both have no problem killing innocents, and they're both pretty wicked villains. But I just think that comic Negan is actually more likable. He's funnier. He's more loud, and I think he's a little bit more reasonable than TV Negan. TV Negan was a little rougher on Rick's group than comic Negan was. Comic Negan just killed Glenn, and after that, he really didn't try to mind fuck them too much. He mostly just made jokes, and it was like, look, just work with us, and we're cool. Just give us the stuff we want. I'm not gonna fuck with you. And TV Negan kept fucking with Rick. He kept fucking with everyone. He kept trying to push everyone's buttons. That's his whole thing. Like, he's got this sort of he's always trying to read people and play this psychology where he's just like he winces at people and is just like, oh, you got balls, or I will fucking do this to you, or I will do that to you, and he's kind of more mean, and even when he's really loud and gets the funny comic dialogue, it just doesn't translate as well as it does in the comics. And all of these factors combined, I mean, TV Negan did kill two very likable, popular characters instead of one very likable, popular character like comic Negan killed. And overall, TV Negan just kind of seems like more of an asshole, just by I don't know if I'd say a large margin, but definitely by a margin. And I think he was just more of an asshole to everyone, more willing to kill people, and it's just different. I think it's going to be more difficult to redeem Negan than it was in the comics. Like I said, he killed two characters instead of one, two beloved characters at that. And the way that Maggie and Rick and everyone, in the comics, he kills Glenn, and Glenn's a big character, but we saw him on paper. We read his dialogue, and Glenn wasn't even as likable as he was on the TV show. His dialogue, his personality, Glenn was kind of a coward, and he didn't really get that much character development, and he wasn't super close to Rick. And TV show, all those things. In the TV show, all those things are different. Glenn is close to Rick. Glenn is pretty much Rick's brother, like Daryl is. Glenn is incredibly noble, incredibly brave. He's not a coward. He's selfless. He would do anything for his wife, Maggie. He would do anything for Rick. He's loyal. He's more of a morally high person. And we spend 7 years physically watching him, physically watching the actor, the live, real-life human being and then this guy with this bat just bashes his head in and says all this sick shit, and also did it to Abraham. That is kind of different. That is kind of harder to redeem than what Negan did to Glenn in the comics. It's more difficult, and with Maggie and Rick, it's more difficult to even accepting Negan like they do in the comics, because Rick, we kind of experience what Rick experienced in a way. We spent so much time with this human being, Glenn, this real life human being, like Rick does in the TV show. We kind of experience that with him, and then when Glenn dies, it's like, well, how are we gonna buy Rick working with Negan, being a kind of, if they're in a shitty situation, Rick and Negan teaming up. That's kind of difficult to accept. Rick just banishing Negan, or Rick taking Negan's advice. All those things happen in the comics. Rick takes Negan's advice on things. I think it's more difficult to buy. And Maggie's different. Maggie is a super pissed off, almost just her in all of season 8 and maybe even season 7. All she cared about was revenge. She was fueled by a desire for revenge, by a desire to get revenge and kill Negan. And in the comics, Maggie just says, "Yeah, let's keep him alive. Let's lock him up. Glenn will accept that." And then when Negan ends up escaping, Maggie almost kills him, but Negan actually begs her to kill him, and she decides to just let him live with his guilt, because she realizes that Negan feels guilt about killing Glenn. In the TV show, I'm not sure if I see that happening. I see Maggie just wanting to kill him. But for Negan as a character, can he redeem himself in the TV show? Yes, I think he can. Jeffrey Dean Morgan definitely has the acting ability to play that. And he's definitely given Negan some redeeming qualities. It's difficult because he's done so much bad shit to so many characters in the past 3 years, and then we get a couple of scenes of him where he's like, "Oh, I fucked up my relationship with my wife. She's dead." And it's just like, we don't care. You've done so much shit to everyone. Fuck you and your sad backstory, you piece of shit. Die a painful death. I think that's how most people feel. I think most people really don't give a shit about his stupid, sad backstory. We want him dead. So it's definitely more of a challenge for. It's going to be more of a challenge for Negan to successfully redeem himself as a character to the audience eyes, but Jeffrey Dean Morgan has that acting ability, and he's given Negan some moments where Negan is a human being and sees the error of his ways, possibly, maybe a little bit, or is maybe a little bit reasonable. We had that big moment in the finale where Rick actually convinces Negan that Carl's idea that they could all just live together in peace was right. And Negan Negan just freezes. He was about to kill Rick, and then he just freezes and starts crying. And it just seems like he just completely breaks down for 10, 20 seconds. And then, of course, Rick stabs Negan and locks him up. But yes, I think that Negan can redeem himself. But he does need those several years where he's locked up, where he has a chance to realize that he fucked up, that he was fucking things up, that his way was wrong, that Rick's way was right. And another thing about Negan is that he was always saying that he was saving people and he's serving the greater good, but I think that he needs to realize that a part of him enjoyed what he was doing. He was enjoying it. He was enjoying killing people. He was enjoying being king shit and getting everything and everyone serving him and having all that power and just being the basically the fat king in a way. I think Negan was enjoying that, and Negan needs to be honest with himself about that. He has to be honest with himself about everything that he did wrong. And once he does that, and once he swears to himself that he will never make those mistakes again and that he's going to be a good person now that helps others, then he can begin that road to redemption. Anyway, those are my thoughts on TV Negan redeeming himself. Overall, I do think that he can do it, and I hope that it is handled well with season 9. There's some issues with the character. The actor is not one of them. So if the actor gets the right material, we can get some pretty cool stuff with Negan in the upcoming season 9. If they don't kill him off like Rick, Maggie, and everyone else, apparently. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't be shy. Hit that like and subscribe. I'm not going anywhere. I make 1 to 2 Walking Dead videos per day. With all that said, I am Spencer Rhodes, and I will see you guys later. Bye.